Welcome back to Good Morning Let's Basketball. Thank you all for the support we've been getting these past few weeks. And shout out to Miles, he's been helping us behind the scenes. And check out his beats he makes. His YouTube channel is in the description of every video. And he's adding his own segments in our podcast each week. So make sure to watch the video to see where his segments are this week. And make sure to subscribe and like the video. We are going to continue to upload each week. And we got a bonus video that is not in the podcast related this week, and it is in the editing process for this week. So make sure to hit that bell to get notifications when we are going to drop that video. In a league full of talented players, there are some who should not be getting the media coverage that they are getting. In a random survey made by The Athletic, they surveyed 54 NBA players and they voted on who's the most overrated in the league today. And I'll pop that graphic up right here so you guys can see who they voted on. So we are going to talk about this and talk about who we think is the most overrated in the NBA today in our opinions. And I'm interested to see who you guys picked for the most overrated in the league. But this graphic had Trae Young number one, number two was Julius Randle, and number three was Pascal Siakam. So do you guys think this is fair, or who do you guys think is the most overrated in the league?
Looking at the list, I feel like they did pretty decent. They got most of it right. I don't really think Trae Young is that too overrated. I feel like people are kind of giving him like the respect that he's earning or deserves. I feel like a lot of people just kind of call him overrated just because of like his defense and like how far he's been able to take the Hawks so far in his career. But the Hawks did make the conference finals the year the Bucks won the championship in 2021. I know people call it fluky, but call it what you want. You still have to play teams in the playoffs, best seven series and win. I don't really think Trae Young's that overrated. But the player that I was going to pick, or who I think is the most overrated player in the NBA, came in at number two in this list. The players nailed it. I think it's Julius Randle. And the reason why I think Julius Randle is the most overrated player in the league is because you can't win with this guy. Plain and simple. I feel like the Knicks are just straight up better off without him. In a league where ball movement is the main priority, this dude is definition of the ball sticking to his hands and not swinging the rock. He's damn near a ball stopper. There's been players in the past in the NBA that were good enough to be ball stoppers. Kobe, Melo, Gilbert Arenas. Julius Randle simply just isn't good enough. Like I just said a little bit ago, the ball literally just sticks to his hands. He kind of reminds me a little bit of New York Melo, just not as good. They can't really win with Julius Randle. Some of his shot selection just throughout the whole season and even in the playoffs this year when they played, I believe they played Miami in the second round. The dude was just playing straight up horrible. I mean, his shot selection just was not good. He shot a lot of contested threes, a lot of dribble pull ups. He's a decent shot creator, but he plays like he's one of the better shot creators in the league. I don't really think he's all-star level talent anymore. A couple years ago, he had pretty great seasons and he was playing very well. But ever since then, I feel like he's kind of struggling to find his personnel, especially with some new younger talent on the team with Jalen Brunson and RJ Barrett, and maybe other players that might get in the future. I feel like he's just kind of struggling to find his role, and in turn, it's kind of turned into play back. But looking at the rest of the list, one thing that kind of confused me that I wanted to point out: 7% of players voted Dylan Brooks as one of the most overrated players in the league. When I think of like an overrated player, I think like of an all-star level player. So, or someone that's good enough and can be considered all-star level. So I'm really kind of confused why Dylan Brooks made this list. But fuck it, there's a bunch of other names on here that could be questioned. But yeah, those are kind of my reasons as to why I think Julius Randle's the most overrated player in the league. I think they're better off without him. I think they should definitely consider shot trade scenario. They don't even need an all-star level in return. I feel like anything in return, draft picks, a solid four, or maybe even another guard could help them out.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all the points that you hit on there. I don't really know too much of the influence that Julius Randle has had. I don't know. I feel like I remember a few months ago when we were talking about the Knicks, you guys were like, "Oh yeah, they got him, and Julius Randle." But I digress. I'm not going to go into that. For my pick of who the most overrated player in the NBA might be, I'm going to go with Austin Reeves. I think this is a player that has been in the mouths of every NBA fan probably for the last few months, and it's mostly just because of his All Star or not All Star, sorry, his finals perform not finals, Jesus, playoffs performance. He had a really good showing kind of towards the end of the season for the Lakers, and I think that while it was a good performance by him, it's not warranted for him to get what he got afterwards, which is a 4 year, $56 million contract. Over the course of 4 years, that's $14 million, which for a 6'5" shooting guard that doesn't really offer you a lot on the court. Last season, his averages were 13 points per game. His assists, his rebounds were 3 and 3. And, I have a list pulled up here that's actually 2K ratings list. But of the 6'5" shooting guard players in the league right now, Austin Reeves would rank number 13. The top five, I'm just going to kind of name them really quick, are Devin Booker, James Harden, Tyrese Halliburton, Drew Holiday, and Zach LaVine, right? And to me, when you look at those type of players, when you're a shooting guard that's 6'5", you're a little bit taller, I think, than the average shooting guard in the league, because most of them are either, I think I would think of them as like outlet passers, or sorry, outlet scores that you would throw out to the wing and they'd score you a three, something to that effect. Or they're an absolute like freak of nature and they're an absolute scorer like Devin Booker, like James Harden, like Zach LaVine, and like Drew Holiday. But I don't see that with Austin Reeves. I don't think he's the same level of player on either end. He's not a knockdown 3-point shooter, and he's not the guy that's going to get you a bucket. So where's his place in any team that he goes to? Even with the Lakers, you know, I think they overpaid for him, to be completely honest. On this list, I'm going to go back to the list again. I looked up the person that was ranked one position lower than Austin Reeves, and that would be Jalen Williams on OKC. Now, Jalen Williams' contract is 4 years, $8 million. 4 years, $8 million. That means he's earning $2 million a year. Wait. Yeah, sorry. Thought I did my math wrong for a second. But yeah, he's making $2 million a year. In comparison to the guy that's supposed to be slightly better than him, but's actually worse as a 6'5" shooting guard, is making 14. So to me, I just think that the Lakers overpaid, and I think that all of this hype around this player right now is kind of too early. We just saw him perform well in the playoffs. They're taking a risk by paying him so much money, but this happens all the time. Players have a good playoffs or a good showing during the regular season, and then they give them a crazy contract, and then you don't see the same level of play anymore. I think that Austin Reeves is a good athlete, but I do think that he is the most overrated player on this list and probably on anyone's list.
Solid. I like you guys' two picks. For my pick, I picked a guy who it seems like he kind of complains a lot in the league and thinks he's really good than what he really is and what he gives on the court. He averages last season was 13.4 points, 1.4 blocks, 1.2 assists, and 11.6 rebounds. And that's Rudy Gobert. The trade when the Timberwolves acquired him from the Jazz didn't really make sense. They gave up like their whole future to get Rudy Gobert and pair him with Cat down low. And it kind of didn't make sense for them to do that, just to have two twin towers of like kind of overrated center, that being Rudy Gobert. And he has 3 defensive players of the year, which, yeah, given his length, he is really good against guarding around the rim and stuff. But he kind of lacks like those other refinements of other centers in the NBA. And he doesn't have the best hands in the league. He doesn't have that good of post moves. And when he's guarded against like other better big men in the league, he kind of shrinks down and he's not really the same player as he projects that image of him being good as. And there was a debate that Shaq and Rudy Gobert would play against each other, and Shaq was like, I'd average like 40 points and 16 rebounds against you, be barbecue chicken all day. And I'd agree, like, Rudy Gobert is not stopping a prime dominant Shaq. He's crazy if he thinks he could even compete against that.
Yeah, Minnesota did to fire Rudy Gobert, which is simply, I think, uncalled for. Because I remember the beginning part of the season, like first like 2 or 3 months in the season, like power rankings came out for their teams, like where they ranked offensively and where they ranked defensively. When Rudy Gobert and Cat were both on the court at the same time, they actually had one of the top 3 ranked defenses, but they were dead last in offense. So while they were strong defensively, they were the worst team in the league offensively, which makes sense. You have 2 centers who have complete opposite play styles on the court at the same time. There was zero spacing. Rudy Gobert, I mean, you can't really sit him on the block because he doesn't have any post moves, not even a post hook or a simple drop step, which is what they teach the tallest kid on the fifth grade basketball team when he first signs up. So I don't even know how he doesn't have that in his bag. You can't put him in the mid post area because then again, he's not that great of a passer. He's not too offensive minded. Yeah, you can have him up top setting screens and rolling to the basket, but you also have Cat to do that too, who's going to be better in a pick and roll because he has good post moves and he's one of the greatest 3-point shooting centers of all time. So then where do you put him in the offense? You can't have him on the perimeter because he's zero threat out there. He's not going to shoot the ball even if he's wide ass open.
He's
He's
a
not going to be
liability.
a great passer. He's just a liability offensively at this point. So that's kind of confusing on why Minnesota went and got Cat. I don't really know what their vision was in acquiring him, considering that they gave up 7 or 8 players just for Rudy Gobert.
Yeah.
So still
I,
very
I
confusing. I don't really get it. And
I
he hasn't been getting along too great with the players on the team. Remember, near the end of the season, he got in that scuffle with Kyle Anderson,
yeah.
which is just hilarious that those two got in a scuffle. It's kind of just like two trash cans came to life and we're arguing about who stunk worse.
I was just gonna say I think you guys both hit on all the points, and I think the simple answer of why did Minnesota acquire Rudy Gobert is because Victor's right. This is a very overrated player, and they might have thought oh, getting Rudy Gobert is. I mean, they have analysts and they have people looking out for this kind of thing, and obviously maybe they saw something that we didn't, but whatever it was, he definitely deserves to be on this list of overrated players because that was just ridiculous. Even with the scuffle at the end of the season, didn't do anything, and then just to blow it all up is ridiculous.
I don't think his defensive player of the year awards are that like impressive either. I feel like they were just very stat based, which I feel like is kind of incorrect. I never really liked the picks that they've made the past few years with the defensive player of the year. So I feel like they base it a lot off stats, and defense is kind of hard to measure statistically. Like, yeah, you can see how many steals they average, but one year Steph Curry was the league leader in steals. Would you consider him being defense player of the year? Absolutely not. He can play defense, he's good, but he's not the best defensive player of that season. A lot of steals are kind of like a weird thing. I kind of like an overhyped stat because a lot of people can get in the passing lane from steals, which wasn't like you didn't necessarily steal it from the person you were guarding more so someone made a bad pass or you read the passing lane, which is still a good skill to have, but it's just kind of like a weird stat. But for Rudy Gobert, it was solely based off blocks. He has great length, he's long, and he's a good shot blocker. But when you look at him on the other aspects of defense, watching him play help side, can he guard someone out 3-point line, which he can. Everyone has seen the video of him guarding Steph Curry when Steph Curry literally put him in a circle twice, like a goddamn merry-go-round. Can't really guard up there. So I feel like his 3 defensive player of the years to me they don't hold a lot of value.
No, and I feel like he kind of complained a lot for them, like even his All-Star selection.
Yeah, true. Like no one wants to see freaking Rudy Gobert in the All-Star game, bro. Like that's just how it is. He knows that. Jokic even knows no one wants to see him in the All-Star game. So for Rudy Gobert to think he deserves to be there, kick rocks.
I don't know what Anthony Edwards is saying. Like he's saying that he expects a lot from Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns next season, that they're going to take the regular season very serious and to watch out for them. But I don't know how good that trio is going to be. I don't think they're going to be that great, in my opinion. I think Anthony Edwards is the best player on that team. And Rudy Gobert made his first three-pointer, if you guys saw that the other day, and he said he felt like he lost his virginity, which crazy to say that after making a first three.
Not even in an NBA game either. I believe it was in the FIBA
FIBA.
World Cup group stage games that have been happening recently. I don't know if they're exhibitions or group stages, but I don't give a shit. I don't know if you guys do. But I don't know if this Minnesota team can find an offensive scheme that works, that gets Rudy Gobert kind of out the way. I feel like they could find some success. I don't think they'll be contenders in the West. They definitely won't be, especially because the team is still young and, cat's cat. But
You know what I just realized? I don't think it's that Minnesota like saw something in Rudy Gobert or anything. I think they just love centers because they're paying. I think Naz Reid, Rudy Gobert, and Cat. It's the highest paid centers in the league. They're paying 3 centers, like
yeah,
ridiculous amount of money.
Cat's contract is pretty big. I think he's like somewhere in the range of like 220 to 260 million dollars for however many years. I believe it's 5 years. I think it's 5 year 260 what he's on right now, but that's a pretty hefty amount of cash. Like that's definitely one of the more higher paid players in the league. And Karl Anthony Towns is a good player, but like I said, he's just not a guy I think you can win a championship with.
And now, enjoy this week's segment with Miles, labeled Drop the Mic.
Skip it up and down.
I'm over here stroking my.
What's up, everybody? It's Mike Miles back on the Good Morning Let's Basketball podcast. And today we got the first installment of Drop the Mic. We're going to be talking about the top 5 most overrated yet somehow popular NBA highlights. So let's get right into this. Number 1, we're starting off. We got the Clippers playing Washington. Many of you know this play. It's John Wall's 360 layup on Matt Barnes. Not really sure what the deal is with this play. It looks nice. It's pretty sick in slow-mo. But let's be honest, I feel like a lot of us could do this. John Wall, amazingly athletic point guard, but he is John Wall. I think he could do this about 9 out of 10 times if he tried this. And I think it's just the fact that it was done in a game is what makes it so popular. I got some amateur basketball friends that could do this play. All right, let's move on to number 4. We got the playoffs. That's the only reason this play is popular. But we got Manu Ginobili absolutely stuffing James Harden's shot. And, you know, it's a good play. It is the playoffs. The environment's crazy. But, I mean, James Harden is practically giving him this block. I'm not really sure why everyone thinks this block is insane. Maybe they're giving a bias to Ginobili because he's old here. Damn near 39 in this clip, I believe. But, you know, it's a cool play. Is it that great? Is it that career-defining? Not really. Not really. Number 3. Let's move on here. We got Zion Williamson in his debut Summer League game. He's playing Kevin Knox, steals the ball from him, brute strength, dunks it. You know, powerful dunk. You got him flexing. A lot of this play I attribute to just Zion's hype coming into the league. You know, you're ripping the ball away from Kevin Knox. And, I mean, hindsight is 2020, but, I mean, come on, man. That's fucking Kevin Knox. The guy's a pussy. But, nah, respect to Kevin Knox, though. But, you know, it's Zion. He's 280. He should be able to do that. All right, moving on to number 2. This might be a little controversial, but we got Curry breaking down CP3 on the baseline. When this play happened, I swear to God, Instagram was popping off like I've never seen it before, at least the NBA side of Instagram. But, I mean, come on, man. It's a nice play, but Chris Paul literally just stepped on his foot. I don't think Curry really did anything. You know, I believe this was either the season before or his unanimous MVP season. So, like, I mean, come on. He's the MVP. It's going to get coverage, but Chris Paul really just stepped on his foot. And we got number 1, the absolute worst play I'll ever see. Apparently, it's a 60 greatest playoff moment. Is this fucking John Havlicek steal and this annoying-ass announcer. I don't care how iconic the announcing is, how iconic the commentary is. It's shit. Who cares if he stole the fucking ball? I mean, come on, man. They won like 8 championships in this era. Is it really that big of a deal if John Havlicek steals the fucking ball? I mean, the highlight of this clip is the guy fucking taking the ball and then absolutely running into someone after the play happened. 60 greatest playoff moments is bullshit.
So an NBA player who's kind of been catching some buzz recently for their great storytelling is Jeff Teague. I don't know. I've been seeing him everywhere, like on my TikTok and Instagram, just him on podcasts telling stories. Definitely up there with Iman Shumpert for NBA storytelling. But he said something the other day that was kind of interesting. He said, rings don't matter to me. When I go to the park, I see a little kid playing like James Harden. I don't really see little kids playing like Dwayne. And this kind of brought up a question to me of, can we debate between who's better between James Harden or D Wade? And I feel like it's definitely a debate that we can have. So we're definitely going to be speaking on that today. And kind of my wisdom behind this, when I look at it and I think who is more talented and who is just a better quote unquote hooper, I'm going to say it was James Harden. I mean, people kind of forget just how great prime Houston Rockets James Harden really was. I think he was definitely one of the more better one-on-one players we've ever seen. And just all the moves that he was able to hit, all the ankle breakers this guy had. He was a great three-point shooter. I mean, he's third all-time for NBA three-pointers. I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about that. At one point, this dude was a walking 40-point triple-double. The years he had Chris Paul, those years before that. Better overall around hooper and more skill, say James Harden. But when it comes to legacy and who would I rather have on my team to win a championship, I'm going to pick D Wade. Because I've seen how far James Harden can take a team. James Harden's only been in the NBA Finals once, and it wasn't even in the prime of Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook when they were all, 22, 23 years old. And they got gentlemen swept by a prime Miami Heat team with D Wade on it. D Wade was also in his prime. But we look at D Wade, he has 3 NBA championships. And people are going to say, oh, yeah, but he won 2 of them with a prime LeBron and prime Chris Bosh. Sure, but they also beat the San Antonio Spurs, and they beat one of the more hyped younger teams that were coming up that unfortunately broke off, which was the Thunder. But even before those 2 championships, he won a ring for Miami back in, what was it, 06, 07, when he was definitely, it was one of his first few years in the league. He was probably like 23, 24 years old. He averaged damn near 30 in those finals. We know he was able to do it. I don't want to say by himself because he has a solid team, but as a number one option. James Harden, as a number one option, has never even made the NBA Finals. So I still feel like it's comfortable that we can say that D Wade is still better than James Harden solely on the fact that his legacy is better. He's a better team player. And yeah, I mean, D Wade even took a pay cut for LeBron and Chris Bosh to show up on the team in the prime of his career. So I kind of want to know what you guys have to say about this Harden and Dwayne Wade debate.
So first, I would say that the scenario of a kid, playing basketball and they're imitating James Harden, I don't necessarily, first of all, agree with even the scenario because, yeah, you could go up to a kid and, say, oh, like, who are you imitating? I guess you could say, oh, yeah, James Harden. But if you asked a kid that, depending on their age, if they actually love the game of basketball and if they actually wanted to be in a place where like they would go into high school sports or middle school sports and then play basketball throughout college and stuff like that, no, they don't want to be James Harden. I mean, you look at the head to head of Dwayne Wade versus James Harden. You say like, oh, who would you rather? Hey kid, who would you rather have been, James Harden or Dwayne Wade? And I would pick Dwayne Wade. And I mean, I think the kid would be stupid not to pick Dwayne Wade too. But here's a couple reasons why. So as a shooting guard, is the third best shooting guard of all time in the NBA, right? And so already you talk about legacy or already history, I guess you'd say. And Dwayne Wade has more of it. Dwayne Wade has the accolades to support his greatness. It's cool and all to be a great offensive player, and it's cool to have great regular season turnouts and stuff like that. But if you can't show out in the playoffs and if you can't make it far and win a finals or a championship or anything like that, then it doesn't mean as much. And to me, if we're talking about offensive player versus greatness, you could make an argument like, oh, well, Russell Westbrook, averaged a triple double over the course of, I think, we always debate this, but I'm pretty sure he averaged a triple double for 3 seasons, or maybe I could be completely wrong on that. But I thought that's what the statistic was. Maybe it was just 1 season. I don't know. Point is, if you took a head-to-head of, let's say, oh, who's the better player, Russell Westbrook as a point guard or Curry, right? Offensively, no, honestly, you couldn't even make that argument. Never mind. That blows up because Curry's Curry's a phenom offensively. But my point is that, James Harden, yes, he may have had good turnouts here and there, but overall, when you look at the history of their whole career, I would take Dwayne Wade every day.
If you're just gonna go off resume wise and like legacy wise, like Kevin said, I think you'd have to pick D Wade. I think he's probably the overall like better player at that aspect of it. But if you're gonna go hooping wise and stats wise, I think it'd be Harden. He has a deeper bag than D Wade did. I think the only category that D Wade was better than Harden was on defense. And men lie, women lie, but numbers don't. And James Harden literally leads in all like career stats and everything against D Wade besides steals and blocks. He has more points, rebounds, assists than D Wade. And he's played less seasons than D Wade, and he's already has all these offensive stats better than D Wade.
Well, kind of like back to what you were saying about Harden almost leading in every single stat offensively on D Wade. I also feel like that was like just the time period that Harden joined the league. But D Wade's been in the league since 03, 04, when as opposed to Harden, who joined the league in like the earlier 2010s, and with him being a number one option longer, he kind of had like more of that freedom to go out there and do what he wants. And like Harden has had like the green light his whole career. Like dude will put up 30 to 40 shots a game. So yeah, even though he is third all time with NBA 3-pointers, he's also damn near shot some of the most three-pointers ever in his career. Then with those years that D Wade lost in the finals, D Wade could have like 5 rings. Let's say they beat Dallas in that year that they lost, and let's say that they completed the three-peat against the San Antonio. D Wade would have 5 rings. At this point, we wouldn't even be talking about if James Harden is better than him. We'd be talking about whether D Wade is better than Kobe or not. Maybe even calling him one of the best. Well, he already is one of the best shooting guards ever. I was going to say Jordan, but I feel like that's a little bit of a reach, especially this just being a theory. If he won those championships that he lost, it'd be a completely different conversation. So to me, I'd have to rock with D Wade. I feel like I'd definitely rather start a franchise with him as a second option or first option better than I would with James Harden, because I know he can play with stars and he has championships. So
For sure. And I want to say too is D Wade started regressing in his career around like 2014, 2015 season. And James Harden, once he got traded to Brooklyn and stuff, his points took a major hit, but his assists went up a lot. He started averaging 10 assists ever since he got traded to Brooklyn, and he's averaging 24 points still, which is pretty good in the league. We do like compare him to his Houston days. He's not as great. He took more of a playmaking role. Now he's not as more of a dominant scorer, but he's still gonna kind of contribute to that team in the playmaking aspect.
yeah, it's just with him being a playmaker, like him taking on that playmaking role hasn't transitioned to any wins. I feel like him being a scorer and number one option was definitely like his like prime better years, as opposed to D Wade, like he won a championship as a second option and as a first option. So I feel like he can kind of just offer more to you than James Harden can. But James Harden might be skillfully better.
An argument that you could make, I don't know if you guys mentioned this already, if you were to drop James Harden into, Dwayne Wade's position back during that time, would he have the same level of championships and could he have more? There is an argument to be made that as an offensive player, because James Harden has the numbers to support that he is better offensively, that maybe, that Heat team might have been better off with James Harden. But this is all hearsay, but that's the only thing that I can think of, because obviously, competitive, or the competitive nature of the league, from early 2010s to now, I think is a completely different ballgame. And with so many really, really strong teams in both the West and the East, and so many phenoms of the sport, it's become a lot more competitive. So James Harden has just kind of become the average in a league where the average is exceptional, pretty much.
Yeah, we said it before too with the contracts that Harden is eligible for with free agency coming up. Like you're more so just paying for the name James Harden rather than like the product that you're gonna get. So to me, I feel like this debate still goes to Dwayne Wade. Other people might disagree, but definitely let us know what you guys think in our comments. Who all time would you rather have, Dwayne Wade or James Harden? Who would you rather start a team with? So a player coming up this year, or a player who just had a pretty successful season this past year, was Donovan Mitchell. But one thing that still remains uncertain with him is his future with Cleveland. A report from Brian Windhorst came out, said that they don't think that under any circumstance that he was ever going to extend his contract with Cleveland this offseason. And Cleveland knew that when they traded for him. They knew that he wasn't going to extend long term with Cleveland whenever his contract was up. I believe he still has one more year left before he's an unrestricted free agent. And he was eligible for an extension this offseason, but he didn't sign anything. So it's looking like he might be shipping out somewhere else. And we've talked about him a lot in past episodes about where he could possibly end up. And one of the teams that we talked about was the Knicks. And I think it would be perfect, considering that it seems like Knicks fans kind of want Julius Randle out of there. I mean, we touched on it earlier. We already know what other players think of him, and hit the fans that he's definitely overrated and he might not be the answer. And the Knicks are kind of in this spot where they can compete right now with the talent that they have. I mean, they have Jalen Brunson. We know what he can do. He's a great point guard. But then we also have the uncertainty with the consistency with RJ Barrett. They have a solid center. And now there's uncertainty. There's the uncertainty with Julius Randle too. So I could definitely see Donovan Mitchell ending up in New York after this next season. As far as him re-signing with Cleveland, they had a pretty early playoff exit this past year, even though that they were one of the more highly ranked teams in the Eastern Conference. They were bounced in the first round by the Knicks. So unless they can turn it around this season and compete longer and harder in the playoffs and possibly have a better season, then I could see Donovan Mitchell staying. But I don't really know if I see that considering just like Donovan Mitchell's history. I mean, we've seen how far he can take a team when he was on the Jazz. I mean, the Jazz at some years they had the best record in the league, and they were even the number one seed in the West, and they still couldn't even make it to the conference finals with Donovan Mitchell being the number one guy. So going to a team like New York, where he has a little bit better help than he did in Utah, because the second best player in Utah was Rudy Gobert, who isn't going to put the ball in the basket, and he wasn't passing it too much. He wasn't passing it to Rudy Gobert as much as he would other stars he would. So I feel like it'd work out better with the Jazz years. But yeah, I don't really see him returning to Cleveland after this year. I definitely see him going to New York or maybe even somewhere like Portland or Dallas, depending on what Kyrie does in the next year or two, which shit could be anything.
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna resign with the Cavaliers. I think he wants to go to Knicks. That's where he's from, New York. And the Jazz did him dirty by, well, not really did him dirty, but they purposely traded him to the Cavs because they didn't want to trade him to the New York. I kind of do like if he was to go to the Knicks, I'd like to see him go there and see what they can do with Donovan Mitchell there. I think they could be a pretty solid team. They got a young core, like you said. You said he's a free agent next season, right?
I believe after this year he will be a free agent, yeah. Because he had that eligibility to extend with Cleveland this year and he didn't. So I'm assuming he has 1 or 2 more years left on his deal. But I think it's one.
Yeah, I just don't see him signing back with the Cavs, especially like how the playoffs went. And I just don't think he sees a future for himself there. And he wants to win. That's the reason why he left the Jazz in the first place, is they just kept getting bounced in the playoffs. And he wants to go somewhere where he feels like he's home and feels like he can win a championship. And I don't think Cleveland's that for him right now. But I do really like Cleveland's squad. I really like that young core they got there. It's just I don't think that's where Donovan Mitchell wants to be.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Donovan Mitchell. I honestly really like his style of play, and I think that he's a player that goes under the radar for a lot of people. But when I think of the caliber of or the level of player that he is, I associate him with Jason Tatum, Devin Booker, other players that are very efficient offensively and can lead a team. Now, Devin Booker sucks, and Jason Tatum's his own person, but to me, again, I really like Donovan Mitchell's style of play. I think personally it was the mistake for him to go to the Eastern Conference. The level of player that I see him as is maybe as I use this term a lot, but a secondary option, right? But you can still have a really good secondary option. Every team right now in the league needs a 1-2 punch to some effect, right? You can't just have one player do all of the work. It just won't go well for you. So I think Donovan Mitchell's best chance at basically getting up to the level that I like that I said, being in the same breath or same conversation as Jason Tatum, Devin Booker, as this is a really good player and he should be getting a lot more attention. I think it's really just about him finding a team where he can excel, but he's not required to be the leading, the leading scorer on a team. I also think that he has a lot better of a chance going back to the Western Conference, just because I think if you're in the East, you are basically signing a declaration of war, or not even a declaration of war. You're just signing like something that basically says, hey, I'm going to be in the shit for the next few years. We look at teams like Boston, teams like Miami, Jimmy Butler, Jason Tatum, Embiid, these are all guys that are like struggling to not only get to the finals, but then also win it against a Western Conference team. So, I think that if he goes to the Knicks, it's going to be the same thing. Not only does he have to fight for his chance at winning a finals, but then it's almost a guarantee that you're going to lose to one of the big names in the West. So I think his best choice is to go to the West. I think that he would be a great addition to a team like you guys said, the Mavericks, if Kyrie were to stay there and they could have Luka, Kyrie, and Donovan Mitchell. I mean, that would definitely be a little bit of a smaller ball type of offensive lineup, but it could play well. Yeah, no, I think that he just needs to find a new team. And I think that while he is not the best player on your team, right now he is, right? Any team you put him on, for the most part, he's going to be the best player on your team. But I think he has a chance at being like one of the NBA's, the best of the best, pretty much. And I think that his line to get to that point is to almost take a step back and play for a good offensive team, somewhere where he is given the ball, but also he is able to take off some of the load off his shoulders, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how I would like him on Mavericks though. I just feel like that, like you said, it'd be a little bit like too small ball
Yeah.
because they got Luka, Kyrie.
Another team that came to mind, like after I got done talking, was Miami. I mean, they're still kind of looking for that second star to get there. And we spoke on in the past, they're having a lot of struggle making a Damian Lillard trade happen. So it is possible that they just kind of can that idea and then go pursue a guy like Donovan Mitchell in next year's free agency.
I
So
I honestly like that a lot.
Yeah.
yeah, thing is just like I'm not too big on Donovan Mitchell. I don't think he's going to be a guy that can win you a finals. I mean, he's had a bunch of opportunities in the past. We know how far Donovan Mitchell can take a team. You can't even take a team to the conference finals. It's number one option. But like you said, as a number two in a team like Miami, which is a team that has made the finals a couple times in the past recent years and conference finals as well, they could definitely get something done. I feel like he would like to play in Miami with Jimmy Butler, another guy that very gritty, wants to win. So if I had to pick a team for him to go, where I think he can make a good impact and compete at a high level, would be Miami.
All right, I just thought of this as another option if he would even consider being probably a third option on this team because I don't see KCP being on the Denver Nuggets long term wise, but if he left and Donovan Mitchell went there, do you think Donovan Mitchell would ultimately go for a third option role?
Who's the second?
Jamal Murray.
Oh, but I think honestly, them two, very close, very close. I don't think that it's DeJounte Murray, Donovan Mitchell. I think that those two guys, if they were on the same team, would be a good shooting guard, point guard position.
You said you don't think they'd be a good backcourt?
No, I do. I do. I like them. I like them a lot, honestly. Yeah, no, I like them. But that pairing, I think, would work really well because neither guy would feel like they have to take that number one spot as outside of Jokic. So I think that would take off some of the stress from both of those guys, and they would just distribute the ball, shoot it down well. Yeah, no, I love that. Honestly, that would be a good addition.
I think in order for that team to work, Donovan Mitchell would have to just take on a completely different offensive role in general because he's pretty ball dominant. Like usually takes the ball up. He's not an amazing like spot up shooter, so you can't really just have him float around the 3-point line. Like, he creates a lot of his own shots and like the drive to the rim. So he's a little that ball dominant style of play is going to be really hard to translate into a Denver Nuggets team where they move the ball very well and they already have a good starting point guard like Jamal Murray, who handles the ball a lot, and Jokic, who even handles the ball a lot already. So I feel like in order for that to work, Donovan Mitchell's going to have to switch up his style of play a little bit. Now, is that something he's down for? He would consider? I don't know. Or if he would even like to join the Denver Nuggets team, which is a team that has succeeded without him. I mean, they definitely don't need him to win a final. It's considered they just won it without him. That's another squad. I don't think Denver would ever go out their way to pursue Donovan Mitchell. I mean, they already lost Bruce Brown. They thought was going to resign, but I could see KCP probably sticking it out there for another few years or so. And they have Christian Brown off the bench, who is put in a lot of valuable minutes. So if they can have someone who could possibly be more effective than Donovan Mitchell and then pay him hundreds of millions of dollars less, I feel like that's something that they're going to pursue rather than going to sign Donovan Mitchell.
For sure. Yeah, like you said, the money, I'd even think of that. They're probably going to pay Jokic and Murray before they even pay Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah. I mean, Jokic
If you want,
is the second most highest paid player in the NBA, so that's money that they've already spent. And then whenever Murray's contract ends, I mean, he's been playing out of his mind. He had a great playoff run, so he's going to be looking for a little bit of extra pennies as well.
another potential place, weren't the Lakers interested in Donovan Mitchell?
The Lakers want everybody. They want anybody.
They do want.
They want anybody who can dribble a basketball on their team.
For sure. They do definitely want anybody and everybody, but D'Angelo Russell's position as the starting point guard is definitely not safe. And I think going off of what Kevin said, if Donovan Mitchell wants to win this the way he says he does, he's going to have to take on a completely different role than he's been taking on right now. Because clearly, as a first option guy, he's not getting it done. But if he can take a step back and play well within a system that has already proven that they can win, like the Lakers and like the Nuggets, I think he could have a bright future.
The Lakers aren't bad. I don't know, like you said, how well he'd be going there if he'd have to switch up his style a lot, go into that more of a playmaker role. But LeBron's going into that playmaker role because he wants to be more of a second option on that team instead of being the first option. So it might potentially work if Donovan Mitchell went there. He'd probably be the first or second option, depending on if they would want to give it to AD first or not.
They'd probably give it to AD since they just extended him for $180 million. So, and they found success. They know that they can win a championship with AD kind of being like that X factor role since they already did it in the bubble. So,
You also don't want to walk around with, your broken glass in your pocket too much. That was a shitty metaphor. But what I mean is that basically, like, if Donovan Mitchell were to be a first or second option, it would take a lot of the health risk off of AD just because right now, over the course of a 72 game season, he's clearly not able to handle that.
yeah, there's also 82 games in a season. So,
Well, not this year, though, because the in-season tournament is different. It takes out like 10 games, I think. Hey, folks, how's it going? Today we've got a little bit of a different game that we're going to be playing. It's called the Crossover Grid. And as you can see, it's 3 teams by 3 teams. The first line is obviously going to be what you're trying to do is match up, the first square all the way to the left. You're trying to match up a player that was both on the Cavaliers and on the Jazz. And then you move one over and you're trying to find a Warriors player that has also been a Jazz player or vice versa. And so on and so forth. So this is incredibly difficult. I don't know how the hell I'm going to play. But yeah, let's get right into it. I'm going to contribute something right now and just say Donovan Mitchell. Even though that's the simple answer, that's going to be mine. So,
What about Colin Sexton? You guys think he'd be lower?
I feel like yeah, he'd probably be a little bit lower. Yeah.
yeah.
Or there's Larry Markkinen. Or I'm trying to think of who else was involved in that trade that we could probably throw in. It's like a small name person.
What was the third name that you said, Victor?
He said Laurie, but I think Laurie would be as high as Donovan Mitchell too.
I don't know. Yeah. No, you're right. His time though on the
Did Ricky
Jazz
Rubio,
was not long.
did Ricky Rubio play for the Jazz?
Yeah, he did.
That could be one.
That's fire.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Ricky Rubio, okay. It's a little sauce.
I was thinking for Warriors and Bucks, Boogie.
Oh, that's a good one.
Good one, yeah. I'll say either
Um,
him or DiVincenzo, but Boogie, I feel like less people would guess Boogie because they forgot he was.
wasn't there a dude like a little bit ago? He played recently. Something with a B. It was like Bogut or something.
Oh yeah, Bogut was on both teams.
Ooh, who do you guys think would be lower?
Bogut was a #1 pick for Milwaukee back whenever he got drafted. And honestly, I even forgot that he played for the Milwaukee Bucks. So I think then Boogie's also more recent.
Mm-hmm.
Boogie is recent. And Boogie played for so many teams that like it's a good shot that he played. You know what I mean? Like he's played on so many teams. Like I feel like it's a good shot too that you'd get him. So I feel like the lower likelihood might be Bogut.
We locking in at Bogut?
Yeah.
22%. I'm thinking Dellavedova. Didn't he play for the Bucks?
Yeah, that's a good one.
I can't think of anyone else off the top of my head, so I feel like that would be good.
24%.
Cleveland and coached by Doc Rivers. Shaq. Like that'd be decent.
You got anybody, Daniel?
No, not for that one. I'm thinking about the teams though for like Olympic teams that were Olympic players that were coached by Doc Rivers or Jazz.
What about Rondo? I didn't mean to cut you off. Rondo for Doc.
I think that would work too.
What do you think would be lower? What do you guys think?
I mean Rondo and Shaq.
I feel like a lot of people would not put Shaq. So I think
Because they didn't think about his time enough for Cleveland or with he was with the Celtics. Solid. So the only gold medalist that played for the Jazz that I can think of off the top of my head would either be Boozer or Darren Williams.
Boozer's a good one. We locking in at Boozer?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Let's
8.
go. Gold medalist for Milwaukee. Did Chris Middleton ever make a Olympic team?
He did. Middleton, are we putting it in?
I just can't remember if he was on an Olympic team or not.
I'm pretty sure he was. Because I think he was there when Clay was there, Draymond, Paul George.
Like what year is that? Like 2016?
Either 2016 or 2018, around there.
I don't know, thinking about it. I don't know if he was or not because I know Harrison Barnes was on it one year.
Yeah, that's the
But
year I'm talking about.
Chris Middleton was on that team?
I think so.
That's really the only one I can think of right now, so you might as well just try it.
I feel like the coached by Doc Rivers and a gold medalist should be easy. Does Embiid have a gold medal?
No.
What about Harden? Yeah, Harden does, doesn't he?
Harden has a gold medal, yeah.
Yeah. Do you
Was
think
he-
Paul
was-
Pierce?
Gold medals, I'd probably either say like Harden or Paul Pierce, to be honest.
I like Paul Pierce. What do you guys like?
Probably Paul Pierce.
Go with him, yeah.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Didn't hold on for the center square Warriors player? What's his name? The analyst on ESPN, Richard Jefferson.
For Warriors and Jazz,
Yeah.
I think you're
Well, I
right.
know he played for I know he played for the Warriors, but I can't remember if he played for the Jazz too.
I think he did. What do you think, Kevin?
I feel like I remember him playing for a lot of
Honest,
teams.
I'm
Huh?
not sure. I don't think he ever played for the Warriors.
I know for a fact he played for the Warriors.
You guys want to try it?
I'm trying.
Yeah.
Dang, clutch.
13. So we said Paul Pierce, right? Victor, did you put that one in already?
It wasn't a get or like he wasn't a gold medalist.
Then go Harden, right? Because Harden definitely was.
Yeah, Harden's probably the next best guess.
We only have one guess remaining, and we can
Harden definitely because I have a memory of him Westbrook getting a gold medal.
I was thinking if you guys had a better one for Warriors and Rivers.
Warriors and Rivers, dude. The Warriors team has just been so like stacked for the last like decade, and they don't like let players like go that often. And when they do, like it would just have to be a player that we would never guess. I feel like.
We just go Harden, call it a day.
Yeah, put Harden in, and let's think about Warriors and Doc Rivers. 'Cause
No,
I feel
this
like
is our last guess. We only have one guess.
even if you get it right, it's not a guess.
You have 9 total guesses, and then once you use all of them, if you didn't fill them up, the game ends.
Gotcha. So yeah, I guess just put Harden. See what we get.
Solid.
I mean, we got 8 out of 9. I guess that's pretty good. I didn't think I was gonna be able to contribute anything to that.
That's a good one. Go back to the list.
Chris Paul, that's a good one too.
Eric Pascal, bro. I was thinking him for like Warriors and Bucks, not for Warriors and Jazz. That's funny. I mean, it would have been wrong if I said his name because he didn't play for the Bucks. But
Hey, these are like the top picks. These are like the highest guesses. So Karl Malone was like the number one answer everybody was picking. You know what I'm saying? Donovan Mitchell for this one was the highest.
yeah, we only had one, which was Chris Middleton. But then again, I had no idea who else we could put in that spot. So closing out today's episode, we're gonna discuss one of the problems that the NBA has kind of been dealing with in the past couple of years, and that is just straight up the coverage of the NBA. Analysts, news people, whatever the hell you want to call them. Oftentimes, we see a lot of the coverage around the NBA just be kind of thrown around, just be weird. It seems like they're just spitting bullshit. So, do you guys feel like that we compare the modern NBA a little bit too much to older generations? And do you think that we hate on the current NBA a little bit too much? Now, like what I said about the coverage, I feel like the comparison always happens with modern day to older generations. It's never not going to be a thing. Like, could he play back then? Could this player from this time period play in today's NBA? Yada yada yada. You're going to hear it all the time whenever a team wins a finals or a player scores a certain amount of points in the game. They're like, oh, but he couldn't do that when the bad boy Pistons were playing, or he couldn't play in that era, this and that. It does get a little annoying. It kind of just takes away from the beauty of the game, and it makes us not appreciate the greatness that's happening in front of our eyes. In the current NBA, it definitely gets hated on too much. I mean, when you speak to someone, they're like, it just looks like a 3-point contest out there. Players don't care, this and that. There's no defense. Now, I kind of disagree with that. I feel like when they talk about there being no defense in the NBA, I kind of just shake my head at the fact because of they bring up like, oh, there's no defense because look at the score of these games and watch when they're playing. But players today have gotten so good to the point where anyone can score and a lot of amount of points can be scored in a certain game. Also, the amount of spacing kind of allows that to happen. When you beat your guy on the 3-point line, sometimes there's no one in the paint for you to challenge you. So you have an open shot or an open layup or dunk or whatever the case is, as well as the evolution of the 3-point shot. You know, teams live and die by the three now. We're going to see a lot of more high score games. So when we talk about the coverage, personally, I think the comparison does happen a little bit too much and the conversation does get really old. And the new current generation of the NBA, I think, is definitely like the most hated on out of any era of basketball.
Oh yeah, it's definitely like a lot of people just were like, "Oh, this didn't happen back when Jordan played," or stuff like that, and people just love to compare eras, and it's just like, let's appreciate what we have now. And the games was great this past season. Like the playoffs were amazing, I thought, in my opinion. And I think the number one complaint a lot of people say is the defense, and like you said, with the spacing the league is just so talented to where these players are able to score this high, and I don't see why people are complaining about that. And we don't cover the NBA as well as other sports. A lot of people, I feel like this season there was a lot of players that were averaging above 30 points. I think it was around seven. We've talked about it before, and nobody was talking about it. That's like the first time that's happened in NBA history. Usually it's around like one or two players that are doing that, and it was seven this year, which is insane. The league was at like an offensive all-time high, and nobody was talking about that. People want to talk about, oh, LeBron's eating in Toronto. I don't know if you guys been seeing that. People are watching him eating breakfast or something in Toronto this past week.
Yeah, no. Just like the
Makes sense.
overall news is dumb. It's like, oh, Victor Wembanyama, very high prospect, taken number one. What does this do for LeBron's legacy? Just shit like this, like the coverage that these analysts in ESPN are just kind of like putting out there. It's just like, who cares, bro? Like, oh, what was that thing, Vicky? You were telling me the other day when I was trying to scramble through topics. Like a page posted something about James Harden, and then James Harden commented on it. Damn, no news this week.
Yeah,
What
it
was the
was.
comment behind that?
So I think it was like Bleacher Report or House of Highlights. James Harden was at a club, and I think he's making his own burgers or something, or he's sponsoring some burgers, something like that. And he had like seven burgers in his hand, and people were like, "What is James Harden doing with all these burgers?" And Harden commented underneath was like, "Damn, there's really no news this week," because they made a whole post about it.
Yeah, it's like it's just dumb. Like I feel like they always have to try to find something to talk about or say.
I think to me, when I think of how far the game of basketball has advanced in the last 3 decades, let's say, I think the closest that the past NBA has been to the modern NBA was in the 90s. And what I mean by that is kind of the starting point of when the 90s NBA is the closest to the modern NBA. Everything before that, I don't think you can compare numbers. I don't think you can compare statistics. Well, obviously those are the same thing, but I don't think those should be even in the same conversation as each other. I think that the game of basketball has excelled way beyond what it was in the 60s or even the 70s or the 80s. And even in the 90s, you look at how proficient how efficient basketball players were at that time, and it doesn't even hold a toe to comparison for what they're doing now. In terms of the defense that is played in modern NBA and how people say it's more lax and that it's not this, I think honestly that is the dumbest argument I think I've ever heard, because to me physicality does not equate to good defense at all, right? If it did, a lot of the guys that you see when you go to your local uh, basketball court that throw elbows would be in the NBA back then. And I think that defenses now are a lot more structured. They're a lot more analytical, right? You're predicting where the offense is going to go, where their hot zones are, where you need to stop them at, right? If you took modern NBA defenses and how much they look into things and how much they prepare for matchups, right? To me it doesn't even hold a toe to what they were doing, or sorry, what they were doing back then doesn't hold a toe to what they're doing now. Yeah, I mean, after the 90s, the game of basketball just got better and better. I think, we saw good basketball in the early 2000s, early 2010s. But now you're talking about you're talking about 8 to 10 to 15 of the teams in the NBA are potentially better than every team in the 90s. That's just, I don't know. That's a bold take. That's a very bold take. But I just really do think that in terms of the way that basketball as a whole has advanced, it's way better now. That being said, right, I think you need to have people talking about the game of basketball in order for it to get better. And that's with any sport, right? There had to be somebody saying, Jordan's rings don't mean that much, in order for someone like LeBron to come along and compete with that. So I think it's good for the sport of basketball. There's a limit to how much hate these players deserve and how much hate these teams deserve, for sure. But you need criticism in order to get better. And I think that the criticism and the hate and kind of pushing players to be better is what is making the NBA what it is today. For a while in, I would say, the mid 2010s, there was conversations of people. I remember that people were annoyed that teams were tanking too much to get better draft picks the next year. And we hated on that so much that now, like Victor said last season, that was probably one of the most competitive NBA seasons we've ever seen. So all in all, yeah, I think that the comparison should not be made anymore of modern day NBA to past NBA, but for maybe different reasons than you guys think.
JJ Redick said it before. We just don't cover, like, the league's very talented, and we don't cover enough about how talented these players are. We just talk about the same three topics every season. Lakers, is LeBron going to retire? And is Warriors going to make it into the championships? It's always something about that along those three lines. It's never about like any of these other great players that are in the league today.
I'm sorry, JJ Redick, that we're not talking more about your career. We'll talk more about it.
That's accurate, though, what he said about the same three topics that we cover. At the start of every NBA season, it's always like, what can the Lakers do? Are the Warriors going to win this year? That's so accurate, bro. When the Denver Nuggets advanced to the finals, the first thing ESPN talked about was the Lakers. What can the Lakers do next year to make it the finals? Like, bro, why? Like, the Denver Nuggets just advanced to the finals for the first time, like, ever, pretty sure. And then this year, and even in the next couple of years, like we always talk about the next great player that's going to join the league, like a rookie. Like this year was Wemby. They're already talking about a kid that's going to get drafted next year from overseas. I don't know where he's from, and they're already overhyping him. It's like, what about the rookies this past season that are about to have their second year and possibly have great years? Guys like Paolo, guys like Chet, guys like Jabari Smith, LaMelo. Like he's finally coming off an injury. He won rookie year. Like we're just like the priorities just kind of messed up, I think.
Honestly, though, I take ESPN and their news with a grain of salt, just because you got to understand from a business standpoint, it makes sense to push the narrative of the best teams in the NBA, the most favorited teams in the NBA, and try to appeal to the most majority of fans, which would be those teams. So I get it, and all it does for us is, I mean, if you want to, if you want an NBA analyst that's going to talk about why Julius Randle is one of the most overrated players in the league, that's why you come to us. So we'll let ESPN do the stupid topics, and we'll cover the stuff that you guys want to see. So
this week's episode, we appreciate you guys tuning in once again. Keep showing love on the YouTube, like and subscribe. Make sure you debate with us in the comments. Follow us on all of our Instagram socials at Good Morning Let's Basketball on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, as well as our personals. And we'll see you guys next week.